afternoon. Welcome to the discussion about Midsummer and other summer and late spring holidays celebrated in the Nordic countries. My name is Ema Stašová, and I have the pleasure to welcome the four guests of today, the four ambassadors. So from the Danish embassy in the Czech Republic, it's His Excellency Ole Frijs-Madsen. From the Finnish embassy in Prague, it's His Excellency Jukka Pesola. The Norwegian ambassador to the Czech Republic, His Excellency Robert Kvile. And from the Swedish embassy in Czechia, His Excellency Fredrik Jörgensen. Welcome. We have gathered here in the Swedish embassy gardens, and we have beautiful summer-like weather, even though it's a bit more Central European temperatures than Nordic ones, but still I think the atmosphere matches very well to our discussion. So let's start with the first question. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of Midsummer? And let's start in Denmark, Ole.
I think for us, Midsummer is two things. It is first of all one of the longest day in the year. So I think for us, Scandinavians and Nordics, it is very important after a long winter that we have summer and bright summer nights. But in a way also thinking, well, now is the longest day, meaning that now it will go the other way. So this is something, not to be too pessimistic. The second thing is our bonfires. Perhaps we will come back to that, but we can talk more about bonfires, but bonfires is immediately connected with that.
What is your first thought, Jukka?
Well, that's quite easy. It has to be sauna and a lake.
Okay, thank you. How about you, Robert?
Well, I think of my childhood in the 1960s. I grew up in a neighborhood with lots of children, and their parents, they organized activities for us on this evening, and the bonfire, of course. But first and foremost, this day, or this period, is the beginning of the summer vacation, and our traveling to my childhood's paradise, which is a small primitive cabin by a lake in the forest. Fishing and swimming and absolute freedom.
Sounds great. How about you, Fredrik, and your ideas?
I would agree with Ole to some extent. I think the Midsummer is defined by the opposite. We are so used to living in darkness and in this cold, almost Arctic climate, at least in Sweden and parts of Finland and Norway. So when summer comes, it's an important thing for us, and we want to celebrate that. And my first thought would be the light. This is, as Ole was saying also, this is the longest day of the year. Or it lies close to the longest day of the year. So this is a very symbolically important thing for us. I would also think of herring. That's a big thing. At Midsummer you should eat herring, and you should have fresh potatoes and certain things to go with that. So it's and I would also think about the weather maybe. There's an old saying in Sweden, and I think it's true statistically, that it's always cold on Midsummer. Even if it's the longest day of the year, it's awfully cold. It's always raining. So this has become almost a Swedish tradition to carry the food from the garden into the kitchen again, out in the garden, depending on what the weather is like. So, but I get, as Robert, I get this feeling from my childhood, carrying this herring back and forth from the house to the garden.
Yes, you have mentioned your childhood, most of you, so maybe we can stay there. Can you reflect on how Midsummer was celebrated when you were kids? And is it different nowadays? Let's start in Finland.
Well, actually, like colleagues over here, so in my childhood, so it's about going to summer cabin and swim, go to sauna and eat some herring and fresh potatoes, of course. And it was a kind of time for the family to come together. But I guess that today it's about also friends and other companions you are sharing that day with. And also today people are celebrating Midsummer also in the cities. They don't have to go to countryside anymore. So it's for everyone today in that sense.
How about you, Robert, and the Norwegian differences from the past and nowadays?
I think today there are less organized activities for the children, but I also believe that there are a few elements that are constant in this celebration. Music, playing, drinking, and zero social distance. Always, and today as well.
How about you, Fredrik?
Yes, zero social distance. That's I think that's an important thing. This is, at least in Sweden, this is one of the celebrations where we actually tend to celebrate with others. It's a very inclusive tradition in a sense. You invite your friends to your summer house if you have one, and you celebrate Midsummer together with others, with a broader circle of friends quite often. At a big party. At Christmas, you tend to celebrate more with the family. So this is a more open tradition, I would say, where people can take part in different ways, and a lot of focus on games for the children and Midsummer pole and all this. There are some activities involved in this.
How is it in Denmark?
Of course, there's a little bit of a similarity from what we hear from our Nordic colleagues here. My recollection of Midsummer when I was child or adolescent was probably like Finland, a little bit more family-oriented. But I guess what also happened when you grew just a little bit older, close to 20 years, was that you actually preferred to be independent and go to events with zero social distancing and having more fun with your friends. So it has evolved in that sense. Another thing which strikes me is that in the old days, which unfortunately was when I was younger, I think there was a bigger tradition for singing. And I think in the other Nordic countries, you're still very good at singing. I'm not quite sure that the Danes any longer are so strong at singing, except for television competitions and stuff like that.
But fællessang, that's a big thing in Denmark.
Fællessang, well, yes, but we may come back to that. But part of our celebrations is actually one particular song, written in, I think, 1860s by Holger Drachmann. And we can talk more about that later, but that song plays a role when we are standing in front of the bonfire. And I'm not sure I hear that song so much more, but there's an explanation for that, which perhaps we can come back to.
Okay. Before we go to the next questions, I would like to ask our online audience, if you have any questions, you can write comment on Facebook, and I can then ask our guests later. But my next question is about history, because maybe we should sort of discuss the background, the historical background of the Midsummer. Robert, would you like to tell us?
Well, originally this is a church holiday, a holy day devoted to John the Baptist. We call it Sankt Hans. Hans is from Johannes, Jan is from Johannes, so this is Honza. And this has changed now, and it's interesting to look at the Danish-Norwegian history. Since the day the celebration in our countries were characterized by this drinking rather than attention to God, the church and authorities started to suppress the celebration of Sankt Hans, and finally it was deleted from the church calendar in 1770. And then today you have the and the religious element of it has disappeared. This is another thing I think which is perhaps common to some of us at least. It has sort of been combined or confused with the summer solstice, letní slunavrat, which occurs on the 21st and 22nd of June. So the religious original background has been lost, I think, today, at least in Norway.
How about Sweden? Is there any specifics to the history of Midsummer?
No, not really. Also in all the Nordic countries, this came from the Christian tradition. I think we were originally celebrating John the Baptist. So there are no differences in this sense, I think. But also in Sweden we have left. Nowadays it has got nothing, I would say, almost nothing to do with Christian traditions. It's more a way of celebrating light coming back again, celebrating summer, and in a sense also celebrating our way of life. As you might know, Sweden, for instance, and all the Nordic countries, we were urbanized quite late. So there's a farmer living in all of us, in a sense, and we all have ancestry, we have roots in the countryside somewhere. And when we have free time, when we head off for vacation, we want to get back to that, as we imagine, that simple way of life, how it was before. It's important to go to the summer house and to enjoy life in a simple way. We live in cities, but we don't like cities, really. So when we get a chance, we want to get back to this simpler life. And this is a way of doing that, celebrating the light, summer, warmth, all this. And also the food, if you're going to get back to that, it's the easy things. It's the herring, it's potatoes, nothing fancy, some strawberries afterwards, but it should be easy to do and easy to eat.
Do you agree, Ole? What is the Danish point of view on this topic?
It's very similar to my colleagues. The historical origins about John the Baptist, but also that has changed. So I think very much, as was said, it's the lightness of the event, the lightness of the light, the lightness of the fire in our cases, the bonfire, perhaps even the lightness of the ladies' dresses on that romantic day. It is light and simple and relaxed and very low key, but still it has some warmth, the warmth of that summer night, of the clear blue sky, the warmth from the bonfire. So there is something a little bit magical about it.
And how about you, Jukka, in Finland?
Well, actually, I would like to add one element to the discussion, in a sense that I believe that the ancient Nordics before Christianity were celebrating Midsummer already, and there are certain traditions which has been carried out to this day even, and Ole mentioned like bonfires, which are quite common also in Finland, and I think that is coming from our pagan times or heathen times before Christianity. So roots are deep, I would say so.
Let's stay at the traditions and tales topic. What is your maybe favorite tradition or tales connected to the Midsummer? Let's start with Fredrik this time in Sweden.
In the old days, even older days than when Ole was young, if we go even further away, further back in history, then this was considered to be a magic night. This is the lightest night of the year, and strange things could happen. There were strange trolls or all kinds of fairies and strange forces out in the forests, and you could encounter those if you dared to go out there. But also nature possessed in those days, that was the assumption, magical forces. So if you, for instance, if you could pick flowers on this midsummer night, and I think they should be 7 or 9, it's a bit unclear there, but 7 was the magical number, I think. If you could pick 7 different types of flowers and put those under your pillow and then go to sleep in the midsummer night, then you would dream about your husband-to-be. So there were forces at play, and that's a nice tradition, to pick those flowers, put them under your pillow, and then hope to see your loved one.
Does this work only for women?
I think it's mostly for women. I haven't tried it myself, so I don't know. I haven't, but I think it was more meant for the women, because they were to see the husband to come. And,
the men had to wait longer. Yes. Okay. How about your
I wish we had that romantic approach of the Swedes, but unfortunately, being Danes, we are a little bit more pragmatic and down to earth. So I guess the part of the historical tradition was that we collected some spices and things like this, and we put them into the fire or close to the fire, and that could contribute to keeping away sort of evilness and things like this. And similar with that sort of witch which we would put on the bonfire, and which we still do, some symbolic witch, would keep away the bad spirits, the evil, and all that. So it's a little bit more going that way than the romantic and the flowers and all that, unfortunately.
Yeah, the witch burning is interesting because we in the Czech Republic do it on the 30th of April, so a bit sooner.
All right.
And the same goes for maple, which is also erected on the 1st of May. So,
Right.
yeah, maybe it's connected with the climate because you need maybe more greens for the maple.
No, we
Not
need
sure
to make
about the
sure
witch.
that it's raining, and it's mostly raining, as we just heard from Fredrik. So it has to be around 21st, 22nd. to spoil
quite
the whole
often,
thing.
Yes, how about Finnish traditions and tales?
Well, actually, based on what colleagues have told, so we have more or less same traditions in every country, like with flowers, for example.
Yeah.
So it's also very popular in Finland. And of course, now I have to come back to sauna. Absolutely,
course.
and that's a kind of sacred tradition in Finland. So Midsummer and sauna, so those two are combined, and you can spend hours in sauna, and it's just to relax, and then you can go to and have a swim and everything else. So that's a kind of tradition which is widely cherished in Finland and universal as well.
For the Czech people, we also like to go to sauna, but maybe it's more connected to the winter time. But in Finland, it's the midsummer opening.
Well, we can go to sauna also in winter time.
Yes, anytime.
24/7, basically, I would say.
So is the midsummer sauna special?
Yes, it is actually, because it's midsummer, and it's supposed to be warm. You never know with the weather, but in any case, so there is kind of magical sense in a way that you go to sauna and you relax over there, and also in some way trying to reach this kind of situation that hopefully also the future will be better, in a way that you are clean and then you have fresh set of clothes and you are enjoying fresh food and everything else. So it's kind of new start in a sense.
Yes.
But may I ask, the Finns are not so talkative, but in the saunas, do you actually talk?
Not so much.
Not so much.
Yes, maybe we can go back to music, because you, Ole, mentioned a song connected to Midsummer. So maybe we can have a look at music or maybe literature or films that capture well the atmosphere of Midsummer. If you can think of any recommendations for our audience. Ole, can you start?
Yeah, I wish I could sing, but I cannot, or I would not recommend that I sing. But this song I refer to from roughly 1860s is actually quite famous and very beautiful and written for this particular purpose. So traditionally, since the end of the previous century, people were singing that around the bonfire. So what happened was that in the 80s, there was the start of a quite popular band, which may also be known in the other Nordic countries. It's called Shubidua. And Shubidua was basically playing rock music translated into Danish with funny texts. That was how they started. And then they evolved and they wrote their own songs, and always playing with words. And at one moment they found out that they could take the Midsummer song and change it 10%. So instead of talking about what was a little bit sacred in Danish, gravhøje, which is some ancient places where you, like graves, they change it into gravhunde, which is actually dogs and that sort of things. And they also changed a little bit the melody. So the problem is that now everybody only remembers Shubidua's song and not the old Holger Drachmann song. So in that way there has been an evolution.
How about Finnish culture connected to Midsummer?
Well, actually, I was scratching my head with that question. So I came up with two actually, and kind of tradition that when you are somewhere in the countryside and Midsummer is taking place, and there are local social clubs or sports clubs, so they are organizing dancing in a way, that there are a couple of guys with what is that, harmonica or accordion and maybe guitar or something like that, and they are playing these really old Finnish songs. Everyone knows what those songs are, and then people are dancing and having a good time. And secondly, I was thinking about any kind of book, something to do with Midsummer, and I came up with one, and it's by Tove Jansson, who created Moomins, and she has written one book about Moomins and Midsummer. So that's quite nice as well.
Good. How about Norway?
Two things come to my mind. First, literature, Norwegian folk tales. We have fabulous collections of folk tales published in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. And one, for example, is called in Norwegian "Sommernatt på Krokskogen." It's translated into English, "A Summer Night in a Norwegian Forest." That the translation totally misses the poetic original. But that is a tale which I think captures very well the atmosphere midsummer in the forest, which we have, particularly Finland, Sweden, and Norway. And then there is an iconic painting in Norway, painted by Nikolai Astrup, 1880 to 1928. He has painted once, the painting is called "A Midsummer Bonfire." This again captures that atmosphere in the countryside, and even, very interesting, this painting by the Norwegian painter is used to illustrate the Czech Wikipedia article on Midsummer.
Okay.
Nikolai Astrup.
So people who are watching online can Google now
Yes.
to have a look. And let's go to Sweden.
Well, I'm not thinking of a particular Swedish song, but we have a very peculiar dance that we do with the children. As we were all saying, this is very much centered around children and children having a good time. So we have something, and we do sing and dance, something called, well, it absolutely doesn't make any sense, but it's about the small frogs, små grodorna in Swedish. And we make some silly gestures, and we sing about those frogs, and we dance around the midsummer pole. And that's a very specific song that I also will refrain from singing, I guess, following Ole's example. Or I can give it a try. I'll give it a try. It goes like this, roughly. Små grodorna är lustiga att se. Små grodorna är lustiga att se. Ej öron, ej svansar hava de. The frogs are funny, they don't have any ears, they don't have any tail. And then we mimic those frogs running around the midsummer pole. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what we do. So, yeah, speaking about music, this was not music, but some kind of, maybe, nice.
Does the whole family do that, or only the children?
Yeah, you're supposed to do that, the whole family. And everybody taking part in this midsummer party should be running around the midsummer pole. And with the rising age, you tend to like this maybe less and less. So I've started not to take part maybe, but it depends on what mood you're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. My next question is, how are you going to celebrate this Midsummer? What is maybe a must that you have to do every year with your family when you are celebrating Midsummer? Jukka.
Well, I'm going to spend my Midsummer here, and most likely working, because in Czech Republic you don't have Midsummer. I have already scheduled a couple of meetings, so that's the way it should be. But when the night comes, so I will warm up sauna, and I will take a couple of beers. That's my Midsummer.
Excellent.
A couple of beers, that's important.
Exactly.
Sounds like a perfect Finnish Midsummer.
At least for me,
Yeah.
for the time being, yes.
How about you, Robert? How are you going to celebrate?
We have invited to our residence, to a garden party, the embassy staff, and with friends, Czech friends, for grilling, and with the children, and even with dogs. So we expect 4 dogs. So it's going to be lively. This is going to be, of course, 100% informal, and therefore no diplomats are invited. There will be only one diplomat there, and that's me.
Okay. How about you, Fredrik?
I'm leaving for my vacation already on Wednesday next week. So when it's time for Midsummer, then I will be in Denmark. We're going back to Sweden through Denmark, and we'll be meeting some friends in Copenhagen and Swedish friends above all. And so we will be celebrating a Swedish Midsummer in Denmark. I was ambassador to Denmark for 5 years before I came here. So we will be getting the herring and the typical Swedish food and all this, I'm sure. It'll be nice.
So it will be more Swedish Midsummer?
It will be a Swedish Midsummer, yes.
In Denmark?
Yeah,
Okay.
in Denmark.
Good. And how about you and Denmark?
I think this year it will be a little bit more low-key. Fortunately, the weather is nice and warm like here today, so it almost feels like sauna, although we don't have quite that Finnish tradition. So it will be low-key here in Prague, but usually we would celebrate it, of course, in the way we just discussed.
Yes. Do you know how do Nordic people celebrate Midsummer in the Czech Republic? Robert, do you have any information what the Nordic people in Prague can do? Maybe this year is a bit complicated because of the pandemic.
Yes. But well, there'll be, of course, not so many Nordic, but Norwegian people, at least few at our house on the 23rd in the evening. But I think, again, this is a day where you go out, meet other people, go to a restaurant, and there are so many possibilities here in Prague, elsewhere in the Czech Republic. And now it's been reopened. And I also, since I'm very fond of Czech beer and Czech food, so when it opened, me and my wife is celebrated by going to a hospoda.
Yes.
I think many Norwegians and Nordic people will go to a hospoda on that evening.
Yeah. How about the Swedish people? How do they celebrate in Prague or in the Czech Republic?
I don't know really. But,
Drinking.
Well, they will be drinking also.
And maybe singing as well.
We haven't touched upon this yet, but Jukka implied it slightly. Drinking is part of it. You should have beer, and together with your herring you should have snaps. That's quite important. One way of celebrating also in Prague would be, of course, to make a picnic. To go out. Prague is a beautiful city with all these parks and the green, and then especially this time of year, it's fantastic. So if you don't have a specific idea about where to go, I think you could bring with you a picnic blanket and the food that you like, and just enjoy Midsummer that way.
Yeah, sounds good. How about the Danish people in Prague?
Well, I think the Danish community here is around 200-300. And I would imagine that some of them individually and in groups would make some midsummer celebration. They may even make bonfires, or if they are along the Voltava, perhaps they will create one there. But otherwise, I think, as Robert also said, it will be going to the hospoda and simply enjoying the nice food and drinks here in the Czech Republic.
And the Finnish community?
Well, I guess like colleagues over here have been saying, so meeting friends and having good time, maybe going to picnic, and also if they have summer houses, so they will have a long weekend over there. So that might be the plan.
I'm now going to ask single questions to each of you that should be more specific for the countries. And the first question is for you, Robert. What are the regional differences in celebrating St. Hans?
Perhaps it's easiest to see regional differences when you look at the bonfire tradition, because in the area where I come from, then you are in the southeast, you are surrounded by forests, and it may be dangerous to put up a big bonfire, and today it may even be forbidden. But if you go to the coastline west of Norway and also the Åsafjord area, you find a tradition of big and really big bonfires, because then you are next to the water, much safer. So I think this is probably the most visible regional differences you find in my country.
My question for Sweden is obvious, because I think Sweden for us is quite connected with gastronomy. We have a couple of cookbooks available in the Czech language about Swedish cuisine. So what is the typical, we already mentioned briefly, but if you can maybe tell us what are the typical food, drinks, and maybe can you cook any of them yourself?
You mean if people in general can cook them themselves, or if I can? Well, we mentioned the herring. That's an important thing,
Yeah.
and the fresh potatoes. And we overall we tend to eat a lot of fish, and that fish now tends to become more and more Norwegian. The salmon tends to come from Norway.
But surströmming?
Surströmming also is but that's not really connected to Midsummer necessarily. That you can have. That could be the topic for a special program or a tasting maybe.
Yeah.
But that has got not got so much to do with Midsummer specifically. But the food at Midsummer should be easy to make. Maybe partially for the reason that you need to carry it back and forth from the house to the garden depending on the weather. But I'm joking. But meatballs is also part of it, and strawberries. Easy to make desserts, ice cream, strawberries, to create this summery feeling. But the answer is yes, you can make most of the food yourself, and people tend to. Maybe these days we buy the herring already fermented in jars, ready at the supermarket. But of course you can do that also. If you've got the time and the patience, you can organize and make your own herring.
How is it in your family? Do you do your own herring or do you buy them?
No, we're a bit lazy, or have become lazy, so we buy it at a supermarket. But they're quite good.
Yeah, agree.
And they're also made in the old traditional way, in small factories out in the countryside. So it's a genuine artisan product in that sense.
Okay. My question for Denmark is about the actual or current situation. How did the pandemic impact the celebrations of Midsummer in Denmark?
Well, it meant obviously that last year it was very reduced. But the advantage still being with the bonfires, first of all, it's outside. And I think the social distancing may or may not be difficult, depends on if you drink or not, but at least you have to keep some distance from the fire. So I hope this year it should be possible again, since the situation has improved a lot, to do a normal Midsummer with some elements of social distancing.
Sounds good. Yes. And in Finland, the Midsummer is also connected with the beginning of the cottage season, which is a big thing in Finland. So can you talk about the cottage culture in Finland?
Well, I mean, first of all, so it's the beginning of the holiday season. So basically, starting from Midsummer, Finland will be closed for 3 or 4 weeks because people are leaving the countryside and to the summer houses and cottages. And basically, well, whatever you do over there, so if you need to do some renovation, or if you just want to relax, go to sauna, swim and so forth. I mean, there are no general rules in that respect, but also in a sense that it's not only about the core family, like mother, father and a couple of children, but also grandparents are coming and cousins and everyone else, so it's about being together, and which is even more important now after pandemic or in this kind of situation. And I have noticed that traveling in Finland is kind of getting new renaissance, that people would like to stay in Finland and to enjoy themselves over there instead of going abroad. And I think that it's a positive side if you need to have something positive coming out of this pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. Now let's go to other summer and spring festivals and holidays you have. In Norway it's the 17th of May, the Constitution Day. What does it mean to you, Robert?
If you look at it historically, it was a day of political fight for independence. But for me and for many Norwegians, this is today a celebration of democracy, a celebration of human rights and tolerance and good governance and all this. It's also a festival. And it's also a manifestation, I think we can say, of patriotism, but not of nationalism. This is a very important distinction. And you can see, typical for the 17th of May in Norway are the children's parades, school parades. Children and the schools traditionally have their own brass band. Today, since Norway, the last few decades have turned into a multicultural society, you do not only see Norwegian flags. You see children with the flags where they have their roots. I think that's quite nice. And that also underscores that this is not a day of nationalism, even if it may look like that. So it's a very important day. We have lost it the 2 last years because of the pandemic. So we have not organized these children's parades, and then a celebration more in the family.
So it's also called Children's Day. I understood it's also because you can eat a lot of ice cream.
It says that this is the day when a child can eat as much ice cream as it wants, but ice creams and sausages. Yes.
Sounds perfect for a child, yes.
Well, even if, it depends on where you are in Norway, it may not be summer-like, it may be snowing, but ice cream belongs to it.
The Constitution Day is also celebrated in Denmark on the 5th of June. So what ideas does it represent?
Well, 5th of June is also our day of democracy, like 17th May in Norway. It relates to our constitution from 1849, by which we are, I think, the 9th oldest democracy according to age of constitution. The constitution has then later been changed a couple of times, including giving the rights to women to vote, but also making it possible that we actually today have a queen, that it didn't have to pass to a man. So these sort of things have been passed over time. Constitution Day is an important day in Denmark. I would say perhaps not to the level as we know it from Norway. We probably don't see so many flags, although we like to use our flags in Denmark as well. It's a semi-official day, so if you are employed in the public, you may get the afternoon free, but not the morning. So it's not like a full day of celebrations. We also don't use national dresses as we used to do probably 75 years ago, and I think other countries have that tradition, which is very nice. But what we do is that we gather typically in parks where the leaders of the political parties, and we have a lot, 9 or 10 for the moment, would then gather, and they would tour around the country on that day, of course, obviously, and make political speeches, not so much about their party programs, but about the importance of democracy and freedom and that things. And that is combined with picnicking and simply enjoying a nice time in the parks. So I guess that's our Constitution Day.
It's also connected with the Father's Day, right?
It is. Sometimes perhaps that drowns a little bit in the Constitution part, but that's right. It is, which is also a fairly big thing in Denmark.
Yes. In Sweden, you celebrate the National Day of Sweden on the 6th of June.
That's right. Yeah.
So, was it, because it's quite new, was it difficult to establish this holiday because of the Midsummer being so close to it?
Maybe in a comparison, we are the least nationalistic or patriotic country in the Nordic countries. I don't know, but it has been a bit difficult to make this a really significant day for us. Still, it is being celebrated, of course, and it is a national holiday since 2005, I think. But originally, this was not the national day. This was the day of the Swedish flag for many, many years, until 1983. And then it became the national day. And the reason it is this day, that's because our first king of national significance, Gustav Vasa, he was elected king on this day in 1523. And this is something that many Swedes have forgotten about. But as most other countries, we are celebrating our independence. And most people have forgotten that we celebrate our independence from Denmark.
Again,
it's all interwoven, this. So many Swedes do not we don't have these sentiments anymore towards the Danes, of course. But there was a union for many years, Kalmarunionen it was called, when Norway, Sweden and Denmark was one country. And when Gustav Vasa became king in Sweden, this was dissolved. So since that day, we became an independent single country. Today, this feels for us maybe less relevant. We don't have to celebrate having gotten rid of the Danes. But certainly, we also celebrate our democracy, our way of life, and celebrations have become. We will never get up to the standard that they have in Norway. We won't come as far as that, but it is improving, and it's being felt like an increasingly important day. Also for those many coming to Sweden now, Sweden is growing by the day. We are becoming a bigger country in numbers. Many are coming to us and to all the Nordic countries. But for those coming as newcomers or as new Swedish citizens, this is an important day, because this is a way of taking part in this evolving national state, Sweden. So for many immigrants to Sweden, this day has a great significance. And for them to be able to take part in celebrating it has a symbolic value, because this also means that you are Swedish. And this is the way that we look upon it. It should be possible to, if you're not born Swedish, you can certainly become Swedish. But by sharing our values, getting the citizenship, and then taking part in building our country. And many think that it's important to many provinces and local communities in Sweden, they have welcoming ceremonies for immigrants on this day. So in that way, it's becoming a national day also for those who have just recently become citizens in the country. So that's a good thing. It points towards our openness in a sense.
What a beautiful idea, really. Yeah. And in Finland, a big thing is the 1st of May, Vappu. I think in most European countries it's the Labor Day, but in Finland it's Students' Day.
Yes, that is correct, and I guess we are the odd one out now, because our Independence Day is in the middle of the winter and you cannot have so many carnivals when it's 20 degrees and snowing.
You can have sauna.
Yeah, but you can have sauna, so exactly.
Portable sauna.
Yeah, but the 1st of May, so it's a Labor Day, but also it has a tradition in agrarian society, in a sense that this was the marking of the season that you were able to work in the fields, in a sense that there was not so much snow and you started to plow the fields and everything else. And also in the Finnish societies, it was the day that when the old work contracts were terminated and new ones were signed for the next year. And that tradition was quite strong. But slowly also students, so they decided that okay, 1st of May is going to be the celebration of spring and celebration of youth. And also in every Finnish city where you have a university, so it's a big carnival for them, and in every town there is a specific statue. And in Finland, when you complete high school, so you get this white student cap. And every 1st of May, so the student unions, so they put that cap on certain statue in that town. And most famous is, of course, Havisamanda in Helsinki, and there are thousands and thousands of people following when they put that cap on the statue. But it's a big thing. Though, of course, you have to take into account that it might be snowing, it might be -5, but it's the beginning of spring.
Yes, I remember when I spent the 1st of May in Finland, it was snowing actually.
Okay, exactly.
But it was still beautiful.
Yeah, that's true.
If I may add just one dimension which perhaps can be of interest also collectively here about the national days. Since we are diplomats here, the national days is of course an occasion abroad to make a celebration, to invite our own constituents, but also to open up to the host country, which we would do. But the point I wanted to make is here today we are three kingdoms and a republic, Finland. And at least in Denmark, when we do these celebrations abroad, we actually have a choice whether we would invite people on the real national day, so 5th of June, or whether we would invite on the Queen's birthday, which is 16th of April. So we do have a choice, and sometimes in certain countries there can be some advantages of climate and others that we will either push it to June or make it earlier to make it more cold. So in a way we have those two options for celebrations.
Yes. Maybe back to Vappu for a brief moment. I wanted to ask about food and drinks, because maybe it's quite significant in Finland what you should eat and drink for Students' Day.
Yes and no. Well, if you're a student, so well, maybe beer, a couple of beers might be in order, and of course sima, which is kind of soft drink that you can make yourself. So that's quite popular, especially if you are small children, so they like that. And a special pastry called tippaleipä. I'm not going to translate that into English. I don't know how. And that is also one part of the Vappu tradition in Finland. Yes.
I think the official translation is funnel cake, but
okay.
I'm not sure if it helps our audience to understand it more. But yeah. When we were discussing food, is there anything to add for Norway and Denmark that stayed unspoken?
Well, herring in Sweden, dried pork meat, dried Jukka, is associated with summer in Norway. Pork, sheep, and with a potato salad and with suitable drinks. Fredrik mentioned schnapps, of course. If the food is heavy, then you need a schnapps to go with it. So this, again...
only for medicinal reasons.
You don't need necessarily to limit it to one. Panak, you can take two. I think this is, hot weather, midsummer, you can have cold food instead of warm food. I think this is why herring is popular, why dried pork meat, sheep meat is popular, together with a cold potato salad.
Yes. How about Denmark? I heard you grill a lot for midsummer.
That is correct. I mean, we do have the tradition of herring for other times of the year. I would say probably a little bit more winter, Christmas. But of course, we don't need an excuse to have our snaps or aquavit. But mainly, the excuse is then that herring. But for midsummer, you're right. We would not in Denmark so much eat herring, but rather have barbecue, beer, I guess. Maybe other sorts of alcohol, but mainly beer. But again, very light, so it could be chicken or something like that. And then the strawberries, that would be sort of in tradition of the light and of summer.
Yes. Do we have any questions for the audience? No? Okay. So I think we are at the end of our discussion. Is there anything you would like to add? Anything that stayed that we didn't discuss yet? Or do you feel we covered
a lot.
Pretty much everything?
I think I'm happy, yes.
Yes? Okay, then thank you very much for being with us and discussing Midsummer.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
so
to our audience and have a great summer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Same to you.